Now I really feel like one of my songs says, in pieces, but each one of those pieces of mine keeps beating. That day I thought I was gonna die.
Sergio was someone who really did hit me, really did make me eat spoiled food, really did make me eat vomit, among other punishments. Why?
Why? Did he disappear from the public eye just when he was at the peak of his career? What was the scandal that she was involved in? Was she a victim of her own naivety or a cunning perpetrator who managed to hide her terrible past thanks to a high dose of charisma? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in this report, about that and many other things. When, in the mid-80s, this artist began to shine on Mexican stages, there was no doubt that she was destined to win over the most diverse audiences. With a provocative attitude and lyrics that aimed to break the stereotypes of the time, she emerged as the new standard-bearer of pop. Her statements to the press ultimately established her as the quintessential youth voice, and her image began to appear in advertisements, television series, and movies. Her daring choreography earned her the early label of an empowered and controversial woman. For some, she was a trailblazer, a role model. For others, an indecent product that had to be boycotted no matter what. Everyone, in some way, had formed an opinion about her, and everyone, even her critics, was left speechless when she was arrested in Brazil, accused of terrible actions. Then a trial would begin and a back and forth in court that would paralyze the entertainment world. Then came prison, reinvention, and new darker revelations. Today, once again, everyone is looking at her.
Everyone is looking at her, looking at her.
Guilty or innocent? Well, I invite you to join me in this video, where we are going to analyze all the points and all the controversies of the famous Trevi-Andrade clan case. And before we start, I would also like you to leave your comment down below. If you knew about this case, if you knew Gloria Trevi, how did you get to know her? Did you see her live? Maybe, or well, what do you think about her? Well, anything you can contribute to this case will be more than welcome down below, and I also invite you to leave suggestions for possible future cases. And I also remind you that you can access these kinds of videos without censorship, without ads. 24 hours before everyone else by clicking the button that says join down below and choosing membership number 2, Maestro Oscuro, and then going to the community tab. And now, without further delay, let's begin. In March 2023, Gloria Trevi became a trending topic on social media. On Twitter, in particular, there was a whole uproar about her name. All the online commotion, however, was not caused by the release of a new song or a flashy music video. The artist's photos were accompanied by a very clear slogan that, as the hours went by, kept gaining more and more supporters. The slogan in question was, "Let's cancel Gloria Trevi." For anyone who was curious about these strong words, there was a link that led to a change.org petition. It stated, "No to Gloria Trevi." At the National Auditorium, the phrase referred to the concert that the woman had scheduled for May. But why were they protesting? And why didn't they want Trevi to perform at the famous National Auditorium? Well, the answer was just one line below, where it said, "We don't want human traffickers." This phrase obviously had a big impact. The petition was launched by an internet user identified as Josefina Saldana. When contacted to elaborate on her interests and motivations, Josefina didn't hesitate. She said bluntly, "Women can't allow artists to keep taking advantage of their fame to hurt us. That's why it's inconceivable that Gloria Trevi is still free, trampling on her victims." Things got more and more suspicious when someone wrote, "Why do we allow a woman who has been accused of corrupting minors to remain unpunished?" Those who had grown up listening to Trevi knew immediately that an old story was struggling to come back to light. A portion of the population considered it a just cause. Trevi shouldn't return to the stage, much less have the luxury of pretending that nothing had happened. Other fans laughed out loud and called all those who tried to close doors to the famous singer with their signatures naive. They described the petition as a childish, hater and envious move, launched by people who couldn't stand that a major artist kept generating success and passion. The youngest ones were left perplexed. They asked with a frown if all of this was some kind of bad joke. To further stir things up, some journalists reminded everyone that the Trevi case was far from closed. They pointed out that the woman was facing new charges in the United States. The debate was on, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. How did Trevi respond? What were these new accusations that people were talking about? To understand the origin of this commotion, we need to start from the beginning. Let's get to know the main characters in this case and delve into the entire plot of this event that shook the world at the end of the 1990s. On February 15, 1968 in Mexico, more precisely in Monterrey, Nuevo León, was born a little girl whom her parents would name Gloria de Los Angeles Treviño Ruiz, but who would rise to fame as Gloria Trevi. That girl liked to always go around with messy hair, and when she got a little older, she would make an anthem to her rebellious hair. We'll get to that in a few minutes. The important thing now is to know that Gloria started showing interest in various artistic disciplines from a very young age. When the music played, she couldn't help but dance and would improvise shows with toy microphones in front of her stuffed animals. She would do playbacks and give herself completely to them. Seeing her innate talent for body expression, her parents led her to dance ballet, although that gave her rhythmic tools to improve her choreography. The truth is that the girl was not very attracted to classical dances. Well, actually quite the opposite. In elementary school, she showed interest in pop music, and after receiving some ovations in school plays, she earned the title of Queen of the School. She loved being the center of attention, and without a doubt she knew exactly how to make that happen. Then she started listening to bands like Led Zeppelin, The Doors and Deep Purple, which worried those around her. She liked the loud chords, but she liked the style those singers displayed even more. That disruptive fashion had a deep impact on her, and made her dream of becoming a star who could show off those qualities under the spotlight. She didn't know, or maybe she did, that it wouldn't take her long to achieve it. At just 10 years old, Gloria convinced her mother to take her to a television contest. The contest aimed to find a girl who looked as much as possible like a young talent of the moment named Lucerito. Gloria won the contest without difficulty. She not only looked like the girl, but also had the ability to emulate her. Lucerito would grow up to become a renowned singer and actress. Gloria would also follow that path, but no longer by imitating her, instead forging her own way. A path that would take her to the top, or rather to the top of the summit. Winning the contest was the first of many keys. Among other gifts, she was given the chance to study at the Televisa Training Center. So yes, nothing would stop her anymore. After years of rehearsals and improvements that led her to learn to read music and play several instruments, she was part of the short-lived group Boquitas Pintadas with other emerging singers. The group, now almost a cult classic, didn't last long due to differences among its members. At that time, Gloria went through a bit of a crisis. Financially, she wasn't at her best, and the dramatic downfall of Boquitas Pintadas, the group in which she had placed all her hopes, plunged her into a bit of a depression. However, she stepped in, determined to get her revenge. She taught aerobics classes to cover her daily expenses and presented a bold proposal for a solo album. How did it go for her? Well, let's answer that with some numbers. Her solo debut album, called What Am I Doing Here, won 3 Golden Globes. Determined not to stop and taking advantage of the momentum from that success, she released her second album, which featured her most iconic song from that era, Loose Hair. In addition, the album was released in several Latin American countries, and Gloria was able to take her show to the most notable theaters across the continent. She had become an icon overnight. Such was the impact she made that she was also recruited for the big screen, and it became impossible not to see her everywhere. In everything new that came out, Gloria was simply destined for pure glory. The next few years passed between recordings, film sets, and tours. The audience, instead of getting tired of her, only managed to love her more and more. There seemed to be no limit to her growth. But then, in 1996, the unexpected happened. In front of an astonished group of journalists, Gloria announced that she was temporarily retiring. The obvious question was why. She, without much drama, explained that she was putting her career on hold because of Andrade's health problems. So we failed to introduce someone essential for Gloria to become as successful as she did. Let's meet someone named Sergio Andrade. Eduardo Andrade was a very clever and intelligent man. He worked at important Mexican companies and spent his later years designing stamp albums. He passed on that cleverness and love for business to his children. One of them, Sergio, would inherit his restless spirit. Sergio was born on November 26, 1955. The boy always stood out among his friends and teachers for his great creativity. At an early age, he entered a conservatory, and after graduating and continuing to train his ear, he also made sure to nurture other curiosities. He took some courses at the University of Philosophy and Letters and others at the University of Psychology. With this background, it's not exactly a surprise to learn that in 1979 he became the youngest artistic director in the history of Columbia Broadcasting System, Mexico. Everyone imagined, indeed, that Sergio's life would be connected to art in one way or another. What no one imagined is that he would end up being one of the secondary culprits in the creation of a symbol that would change everything. First, he was the artistic producer of the legendary Gaby Cosecharia. Not a few hits before quitting that job, so envied by everyone and setting out to produce independently. At 25, he founded a record company and was hired as a music director for a Televisa program. There he met many emerging artists and began to plan, quietly but focused, his next step. In fact, do you remember we talked about Lucerito, the girl whom Gloria imitated to start her career? Well, it turns out that Sergio had also started his career as Lucerito's manager. In a short time, he would become the manager of many others. He would go on to compose hits that marked more than one generation and would be the mind behind several soundtracks that became immortalized during those years. He would participate in radio shows, launch many promising talents in the industry, and perform at festivals. He was respected and admired by businessmen who had been in the entertainment business for decades and still didn't understand how this young man had such a sharp eye. He was also sought after for projects abroad and proved to be just as productive. Everyone wanted to offer him a job at some huge corporation. He would smile, but shake his head. He wanted to remain a lone wolf. In his constant search, he ended up running into a young woman who would leave him mesmerized. Gloria Trevi, the rest you already know? To everything we've mentioned about Trevi's career, we have to add this detail. Behind every detail, Andrade was always there. He wasn't just responsible for earning critical respect for the sound design of Gloria's songs, he was also the one who fulfilled the fans' boldest wishes. He was in charge of editing magazines that featured the singer as the main star, and he would launch the most successful calendar in Mexico, a calendar that would make Gloria Trevi an icon of popular culture and turn her into part of modern folklore. We're talking about Trevi's calendar, which would appear for several consecutive years, reaching sales of hundreds of thousands of copies and international distribution. Yes, Andrade was a marketing genius, but as they say sometimes, not everything that glitters is gold. Even though the situation seemed unusual, it made sense when you analyzed it. If Andrade wasn't in good health, Trevi wasn't going to continue. In a way, they were a team. There were also rumors that they were connected by a bond beyond just work. For her farewell, the woman gave a series of massive concerts, and right after that, she signed an unprecedented contract, which guaranteed her a good future in having soap operas, shows, and more movies. However, after a few appearances, she gave up everything she had signed, and Lisa simply disappeared. And that's how Gloria went from being in every product that was released to standing out, but because of her absence. And what was going on? Well, the truth is that there was a lot of speculation, but no one gave a coherent answer. It wasn't until 2 years later that the mystery was finally revealed. It turns out that in 1998, a book would be released that would generate a lot of controversy. It was a book written by Aline Hernandez, an actress and singer who had been Andrade's wife. There, Aline said that her relationship with the producer had started when she was only 13 years old. But not only that, the woman made another serious accusation in the pages. According to her, Andrade took advantage of Gloria Trevi's fame and recruited dozens of young women with the promise of making them successful in the music world. Once he had them in his clutches, he manipulated them until he abused them. Aline's account suggested that Trevi was a sort of passive accomplice in the whole matter. Had Andrade and Trevi disappeared from the map because they knew that bomb was about to blow up in their faces? Had they run away, knowing that book put them between a rock and a hard place? The book was a total bestseller. More than 200,000 copies were sold in record time. Trevi's close associates tried to discredit what Hernandez had written, calling her bitter. According to them, Trevi's name was used only to double the number of copies sold. All this overexposure encouraged other things to be said. It became known, for example, that Andrade had had a romance with another of the girls he had represented, Mari Boquitas. They had gotten married when she was 15 years old. When asked about the experience, the now adult woman said that during those years, she had suffered a lot because of Sergio and the way he used her. The prodigy manager stopped being seen as such and started being portrayed as a monster by everyone, even by those who had once desperately wanted to work with him. Everything finally exploded when an accusation made by the family of a certain Karina Yapor became public. Karina Yapor was a 15-year-old girl who had been chosen by Andrade. The businessman had told Karina's parents that he would turn her into a mass idol. After getting authorization from them, he told them that the young woman would study at a prestigious Spanish academy. Karina's parents were horrified when they discovered that their daughter was not only not attending that academy, but that she had had a child with Andrade who had made her his lover. The Yapor family indignantly reported Andrade for the crimes of abduction, corruption, and child abuse. After that, Andrade and Trevi returned to the media, but not to be shown as triumphant, but to announce that Interpol was after them. Every day, someone appeared claiming to have seen them. All false alarms. They were fugitives for 10 months, until on January 13, 2000 they were finally found. Gloria Trevi and Sergio Andrade were arrested in Rio de Janeiro. A trial was approaching that nobody wanted to miss. Let's imagine the whole scene for a few seconds. The very famous Gloria Trevi was being arrested in another country by the police. After being accused of human trafficking, the shock was total. The step-by-step of what happened next filled all the news broadcasts and newspapers in Mexico. Trevi and Andrade were transferred to Brasilia, and there they were granted extradition to their homeland. However, in another suspicious turn of events, the couple went through the necessary paperwork to remain in Brazilian territory. That legal maneuver was seen by many as an indirect admission of guilt. Why were they filing those appeals if they were innocent and it was all just a misunderstanding? The defense attorneys argued that their clients refused to be transferred, because they believed that in Mexico the issue was being handled very recklessly, and they would be at risk if they ended up in a prison there.
Look, as I mentioned on another occasion when I was asked about it, the hope of being able to return to Mexico, not as an animal or as a trophy, but with my rights, with the dignity that I believe I deserve because I haven't committed any crime.
2 years went by. 2 years in which Trevi's fans and haters fought on television shows. 2 years in which there were collective burnings of the singer's records. 2 years in which her most fervent followers lit candles for them in massive marches so they wouldn't lose faith. After those 2 years, Trevi finally returned to Mexico, no longer as a diva, but serious and determined to clear her name. As if the sequence was missing some ingredients, she got off the plane from Brazil with a baby she introduced as her son, Angel Gabriel. Yes, a son. At first, she didn't want to say who the father of the child was, the one she had conceived in the prison of the southern country. Later, she would say that she had the child with Andrade, but not under normal circumstances. According to her testimony, the prison guards had forced her to have relations with her ex-manager. That, in fact, was her starting point. To emphasize that since she had met Andrade when she was underage, he had used her and taken advantage of her naivety. Gloria Trevi said, in short, that she was another victim of the man, that she had been so manipulated that she hadn't realized she had become an accomplice to this evil manager. The judges faced the difficult task of analyzing these words and being able to decide whether they were real or not, whether she was telling the truth or lying. However, while they were doing so, news came from Brazil. There, some independent media outlets had uncovered a terrible story that ended up implicating Trevi and making things even more complicated for her. It was revealed that Trevi and Andrade had become parents to a baby girl in 1999 while they were fugitives. But where was that little girl now, the one they had named Ana Dalai? Well, this is where things get a little strange. According to what Trevi and Andrade stated, 3 months before the authorities caught them, the baby had died. Supposedly from natural causes, but the truth is that the matter was never completely clear. Even Trevi herself would end up saying later on that, because of the terrible shock she was going through during those months, she hadn't fully understood what had happened. The only thing she knew for sure was that after the girl stopped breathing, Andrade's assistants had taken the body, a body whose whereabouts were also unclear. There was the whole testimony, contradictions that made Trevi be seen in a different light. Although the prosecution requested a sentence of 34 years in prison for the singer, she regained her freedom after being detained for 4 years, 8 months, and 8 days. Andrade, for his part, was convicted of the crimes of corruption of minors, kidnapping, and aggravated abuse. The sentence in the face of the terrible verdict was laughable, only 7 years and 10 months in prison. When the microphones and cameras rushed toward her, Gloria held her head high and claimed that they wanted to bring her down just for being a woman. That Andrade was a criminal, but that they only hated her because she had always been a rebel. That they only wanted to involve her in the other person's problems to silence her and erase her from the place she had worked so hard to earn. These statements were rejected by those who were called the victims of the Trevi-Andrade clan. They were girls like the already mentioned Karina Yapor, Sonia Rios, Carla Carola and Katia de la Cuesta, Tamara Zúñiga, Liliana Regueiro and Wendy Castelo. It should be noted that, as reported by the newspaper Milenio, most of the victims had children with Andrade as they were forced to have sexual relations with the producer. The outrage was still in the air when Gloria Trevi, against all odds, announced that she was going to resume her career as a singer. Also against all odds, after years without releasing a song, she was back on top. Or at the very top, to be more exact. And that's how our story goes back to the beginning. In November 2004, the singer returned to the music world with her 6th studio album, titled How the Universe is Born. After a successful sale, she resumed touring the following year. But not only that, she was crowned as the queen of the gay community in Mexico for her song And Everyone Looks at Me. In addition, she was nominated for the Premio de la Gente and the Billboard Music Award for Best Female Album in the pop category. Once again, everyone applauded her. And that love grew when the woman visited Spain in 2006. To begin altruistic work through an organization she named after her deceased daughter. From then until today, she has done nothing but conquer more and more ground, as if there had never been a pause. She released studio albums, acclaimed live albums, music videos, appeared on television shows, received awards, became a kind of celebrity on new platforms. Young audiences celebrated her, longtime fans started wearing shirts with her name again, she led advertising campaigns, and became the face of many social causes. Her reputation had been completely renewed. Or at least until 2021, when once again it was a book that put her back in the spotlight. And in the crosshairs of drug trafficking, to be more exact. The journalist Anabel Hernandez published a book in 2021 called Emma and the Other Women of the Narco, where she revealed that several famous Mexicans had been linked to drug trafficking. Among the list of accused was Gloria Trevi. She was associated with a powerful man in the world of drugs, Amado Carrillo Fuentes. Amado Carrillo Fuentes was a Mexican drug trafficker who became the leader of the Juarez cartel after killing his boss, Rafael Aguilar Guajardo. Partner of the boss, Pablo Escobar, Carrillo used his fleet of Boeing 727 aircraft to transport cocaine, which is why he was known as the Lord of the Skies. If you want to know more about him, I invite you to watch the video we prepared on my other channel. On my channel called The Day That, where we tell his whole story, his biography, his criminal career, and his death. So you can go watch The Day the Lord of the Skies died. Look for it like that. Or if not, I'll leave you the link as well so you can find it and watch it. According to Annabel Hernandez, there were witnesses who claimed that on February 14, 1996, Amado Carrillo met with Trevi in the presidential suite of the Crown Plaza Hotel in Colonia del Valle in Monterrey. It is said that the Lord of the Skies had been in love with the singer and had bought her some expensive jewelry. She, even knowing that they came from ill-gotten money, would have accepted them. It is said that the statement from the witness cited by the journalist is in a courthouse, waiting for someone to dust it off. Again, faced with these things, Gloria could only laugh and shrug her shoulders, leaving more questions than answers. It wouldn't be long before the hashtag Cancel Gloria Trevi became trendy. In 2021, Gloria Trevi was invited to inaugurate a social reintegration center in her hometown of Nuevo León. On that occasion, through tears, she opened up about her time in prison. "I see you and I see myself in you. 17 years ago, I regained my freedom, and every day, each day, I reintegrate into society." She was applauded and taken as an example of overcoming adversity. However, in January 2023, Rolling Stone magazine published information about a new accusation that would exist against Gloria Trevi and Sergio Andrade for corruption of minors. But now in the United States, two plaintiffs testified that they met the singer in the 1990s when they were 13 and 15 years old. They claimed that Trevi was the one who insisted they join the musical training given by her then manager. They also stated that they have evidence that would clearly show that the singer was not another victim, but rather an important part of that perverse web of abuse. Gloria, for her part, posted a video on her Instagram where she sent a message to her millions of followers. True to her style, she said the following: "Every blow has made me stronger and more human. I'm excited for everything that's coming. I feel that those who don't know me will finally get to know me, and in the end, everyone will love me." Then, she repeated that the accusations were false and that she was tired of always being chased for the same thing. At the end of the statement, she announced that she had started legal action against everyone who had defamed her. She says that time sooner or later will prove her right. She says that everyone who doubted her will have to regret every single one of their words. Meanwhile, in Mexico City, Ella Soy Yo is being filmed, the biographical series based on the life of Gloria Trevi. At the same time, the dispute over whether her shows will continue or not is still ongoing. Those who believe the singer should step away from public life will protest in theaters and stadiums. Is that condemnation valid, considering that the justice system already ruled so many years ago? After leaving prison, Sergio Andrade has tried to return to his passion for music. He is said to be teaching classes, although little is known about him. For a moment, there was a rumor that he was working at an academy where he would work with children. This of course outraged everyone, but the information was never confirmed. One of Andrade's daughters said in an interview that she doesn't have a relationship with her father because of his past as an abuser. In the same interview, she also wondered why Trevi could go on with her life as if nothing happened, when it was obvious that she had been just as guilty as her father. In 2024, the singer will have been out of prison for 20 years, and the question still remains, is she telling the truth? Is Gloria Trevi a woman who knew how to reinvent herself after a terrible experience, or is she a cold-hearted villain worthy of the most ruthless soap opera? Will we ever know?